Colonel Sophia Anderson walks into a small supermarket on a peaceful weekend afternoon in Portland, Oregon. Wearing a casual white shirt, blue jeans, and sneakers, she easily blends in with a crowd of ordinary customers. With a humble appearance, no one could have expected that this woman had spent her entire career defending the country, commanding hundreds of soldiers on the battlefield. Sophia enjoys quiet moments, picking out essential items by herself after a long, stressful day. But not long after, that peace was broken by a seemingly harmless act that revealed the true nature of a human being. At the end of the aisle, a tall man in a police uniform, Officer Rowan Hayes, accidentally dropped a packet of noodles and a bottle of soft drink on the floor. Sophia paused, watching as Rowan glanced at the mess and then walked away casually, leaving behind the mess he had caused. As a soldier, Sophia is trained to pay attention to detail and stay accountable in everything she does. Rowan's sloppy actions and indifferent attitude made it impossible for her to remain silent. Sophia stepped forward, her voice calm but clear. "I'm sorry, sir. You just dropped a few things. Maybe you should pick it up so as not to inconvenience others." Instead of apologizing, Rowan turned. His cold gaze swept over Sophia as if she didn't deserve attention. With a disdainful smile, he replied, "Who do you think you are to tell me what to do? I don't have time to worry about trivial matters." In the face of that arrogant attitude, Sophia remained calm. Her eyes lit up with seriousness as she replied, "As a police officer, you have a responsibility to set an example for the community. Picking up your things is not only polite, but also shows respect to everyone." But Sophia's words did not make Rowan aware of his responsibility. Instead, he was sarcastic, continuing to attack with offensive words. From a small act, the atmosphere in the supermarket had now become tense. The crowd began to pay attention to the confrontation. Sophia could clearly feel the curious, shy eyes from all around. But she stood upright, facing Rowan's challenge, ready to defend her point of view, despite any prejudice or offensive words. Rowan Hayes glanced at Sophia again, his eyes full of contempt. He stood there, tall and complacent, with no intention of following her advice. In her heart, Sophia felt a surge of anger. But with the bravery of a seasoned army officer, she controlled her emotions brilliantly. Her years on the battlefield had taught her that calmness and decisiveness could solve the most stressful situations. She took a deep breath, keeping a calm but no less firm voice. "Sir, this is not just a small matter. You're wearing a police uniform, and everyone here is watching. Doing an act as simple as picking up something is not only a citizen's responsibility, but also a way of representing your profession." Her words were a warning. But instead of listening, Rowan smirked, a laugh full of mockery and arrogance. "Listen," he said, his voice full of sarcasm. "You seem to think you know a lot about the responsibilities of a policeman, but you don't really know anything. This is not worth worrying about. And to be honest, you should take care of your own affairs." Sophia sensed the curious gazes from the people around her. Some had started pulling out their phones to film the scene, but she didn't let it distract her. In her heart, she was angry, not only at Rowan's irresponsibility, but also at the injustice she and many others had suffered. This insult was not just a personal matter. It represented a larger portion of the social prejudices she has fought to overcome throughout her career. Sophia remained still, unflinching. Her eyes gleamed with determination as she looked directly at Rowan. "You're judging the wrong person," she said, her voice soft but full of power. "You may not realize it, but the way you behave now will have consequences, not only for me, but also for you." Rowan smirked, not believing her words. But behind Sophia's calm exterior, anger and steadfastness were simmering. She knew that this was not just a small argument, but a moment for her to stand up for herself and the values she had always believed in. In the face of Rowan's defiant attitude and insulting words, Sophia felt anger rise in her heart. But she did not allow it to overwhelm her calm. Her eyes were cold when she looked directly at him, not flinching in the slightest. Rowan still stood there with a sarcastic smile and eyes full of contempt, as if he was waiting for Sophia to get out of control. But instead of responding with anger, she chose to use the reason and bravery of a seasoned commander. "I'm not here to argue," Sophia said, her voice calm but authoritative. "I just want to remind you that your actions not only affect others, but also reflect who you are as a police officer. You should know your responsibilities better than anyone else." Sophia's sharp words made the surrounding crowd begin to pay more attention. Some people stopped shopping altogether, pausing to watch the developments. Rowan, feeling himself pushed into a mysterious position by the eyes falling on him, decided to use arrogance to hide his embarrassment. He laughed, the sound echoing in the small aisle of the supermarket. "Responsibility?" Rowan smirked, his voice full of sarcasm. "Who are you to explain anything to me? Just a mediocre woman. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't think you have the right to stand here and tell me what to do. You don't understand anything about my work." Rowan's sexist and racist rhetoric was a powerful blow to Sophia's self-esteem. But instead of letting her emotions dominate, she took a deep breath, keeping her eyes steadfast. She knew full well that all her actions at this time could be a testament to the difference between her and Rowan, a true leader versus an abuser of power. "I don't need you to understand who I am," Sophia replied, her voice calm but weighty. "But I want you to understand that anyone in this society deserves to be treated with respect. And if you can't do that, then you're the one who doesn't deserve the uniform you're wearing." Rowan laughed louder, laughing with challenge and contempt. "What do you think you can do to me? I'm a policeman, and the law is on my side. And you're just an ordinary woman of color. You should know your position before you get into trouble yourself." Rowan's words were not only an insult, but also a challenge. But Sophia didn't flinch. She felt the tense silence that enveloped the entire supermarket, everyone's eyes watching her every gesture. This was no longer a personal argument. This was a moment for her to prove that calmness and steadfastness always triumph over arrogance and prejudice. Sophia stood upright, her shoulders stiff, as if she were facing an enemy on the battlefield, not a man in a police uniform. Her eyes lit up with steadfastness, unwavering, though Rowan's words were full of mockery and insult. The surrounding crowd began to get quieter, as if they were all holding their breath, waiting to see her next move. She took a step forward, not afraid at all. Her voice was calm, but sharp as a blade. "You can think of me as anyone, but remember, arrogance and contempt for others don't hide your moral shortcomings. I'm not here to fight for power with you, but I'm not going to let you continue to abuse it." Rowan frowned, his confidence beginning to crack at Sophia's decisive demeanor. He looked at her, trying to find a sign of insecurity or fear, but all he saw was a woman as solid as a bronze statue. The crowd was now fully attentive to the confrontation, with some even holding up their phones to record every moment. "Don't be noble in front of me," Rowan snarled, trying to regain control of the situation. "You're nothing but a troublemaker. If I want, I can kick you out of here right away." Sophia didn't smile, but the corners of her mouth twitched slightly, an expression of a frightening calmness. "If you think your power allows you to behave like that," she said, "then I will let the law answer that. You were wrong to think that I would be afraid." The atmosphere in the supermarket was frozen. The tension increased as the two stood face to face. Rowan, with a large and aggressive appearance, and Sophia, a woman who was not tall, not in uniform, but whose demeanor and eyes exuded undeniable authority. "You may continue to insult me," Sophia said, her voice calm but weighty. "But remember that I'm not here alone. There are a lot of witnesses. And if you think you can use words to put me down, you're wrong. I am not standing here to defend my personal honor. I stand here to defend the values that I have spent my life preserving." The whole supermarket seemed to be in absolute silence. The crowd, although no one dared to speak, through their eyes, Sophia knew that everyone was on her side. Rowan, while still maintaining a tough appearance, could not hide his embarrassment when he realized that the situation was spiraling out of his control. Sophia remained steadfast, like a beacon in the midst of a storm of injustice and prejudice. In the face of a tense situation, when Rowan began to lose control, Sophia remained surprisingly calm. Under the scrutiny, and sometimes fear, of the crowd, she understood that her every action and word at this time not only affected herself, but also proved justice and righteousness. Rowan took a step forward, his voice becoming harder and more aggressive. I warn you, don't make the situation worse. I'm the police, and I have the right to deal with you right here. His words rang out, but instead of frightening Sophia, they only added to the determination in her. Sophia slowly pulled the phone out of her pocket, not in a panic, but in a decisive manner, as if she had planned it in advance. You have your rights, she said, her voice soft but sharp as steel, and I have my rights too. Let us see on whose side the law will be. She dialed a number quickly, her voice calm when the call was connected. Hello, I need support. Right at the Central Supermarket. There is a police officer who is abusing his power and threatening people. I need the competent staff to come here immediately. Rowan was stunned, his eyes wide open when he realized that the situation was no longer under his control. The crowd began to whisper, loudly now, and some people stopped recording video to call the authorities. Sophia, despite standing in the midst of chaos, maintained a calm demeanor. What do you think you're doing? Rowan roared, taking another step toward Sophia. But she didn't back down. Her eyes looked directly at him, without a hint of fear. I'm doing what you're supposed to be doing, defending fairness and responsibility, she said, her voice firm but not high-pitched. At that moment, police car sirens sounded outside, signaling that help had arrived. The crowd dispersed to give way as the officers entered. Sophia slowly pointed her hand at Rowan, her gaze not leaving him. This is the person you need to consider. All of his actions have been documented and fully witnessed. Rowan, who had now lost his arrogance, began to be embarrassed. The confidence on his face disappeared, replaced by confusion and anxiety. Meanwhile, Sophia just stood still calm, as if she had anticipated all the developments. She knew that her intelligence and bravery helped her overcome this challenge, not only to protect herself, but also to prove that justice always needs to be done justly. When the supermarket doors opened and Mayor Mason Ryder walked in, the atmosphere in the already tense space now became even more serious. He appeared with a majestic presence, his sharp eyes sweeping through the crowd before stopping at Sophia. His footsteps were decisive, like a man who came to solve all injustices. Rowan, who had been confused before, was now completely stiff. The usual arrogance on his face disappeared, replaced by a look of bewilderment and fear. He bowed his head and stammered, trying to explain. Mr. Mayor, this is just a misunderstanding. I didn't mean anything. It's just that she... But Mason didn't let him finish the sentence. Shut up, he said, his voice quiet but authoritative, interrupting Rowan. I came here because of an urgent call from Colonel Sophia Anderson, a woman I have great respect for. Her report has been verified and witnessed by many people. Don't think your loose justification can erase what you've done. Sophia stood still, her eyes not leaving Mason. She felt a slight relief to know that justice was about to be served. But her expression remained steadfast, as a reminder that this struggle was not over. Mason walked toward her, his eyes softening. Colonel Anderson, I hope you are not injured or harmed in any way. This behavior is unacceptable and will be dealt with thoroughly. Sophia nodded, her voice calm but still assertive. I'm fine. But this isn't just about me. This is about those in power needing to be held accountable for their actions. If I hadn't stood up today, there would have been many others who would have been treated unfairly. Mason turned to look at Rowan, his eyes cold. You have abused your power, insulted a high-ranking military officer, and lost public trust in the police force. You don't deserve to wear this uniform. A female witness from the crowd stepped up and handed her phone, with a video recording of the incident. Mason glanced at it, and his face became even more serious. "This behavior is intolerable," he declared. Then he turned to the police officers who had just arrived. "Strip him of his weapons and insignia immediately. An investigation will be opened, and he will be subject to all appropriate punishments." Rowan, now completely devastated, was speechless as the officers carried out Mason's orders. The crowd standing outside began to applaud, as a tribute to Sophia and the mayor's tough action. Sophia, though she did not seek honor, felt a deep sense of relief. When Mason turned around, he spoke to her, his voice full of respect. "Colonel Anderson, this city needs people like you to remind us of responsibility and integrity. I'm sorry for what you went through." Sophia nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Mayor. I just hope that these things will bring about real change." Mason nodded, his face solemn but sympathetic. "We're going to make sure of that." Sophia left the supermarket, stepped out into the sun, feeling her heart light. But she knew that the fight for fairness and accountability never stops. And she was ready to keep fighting, not only for herself, but for all those who could not stand up on their own. After being stripped of his badge and weapon at the scene, Rowan Hayes was taken away in heavy silence. His face was devoid of the original arrogance, replaced with fear and confusion. As the police car rolled away from the supermarket, the crowd had not yet dispersed. The chatter and critical gaze continued to follow him like a ghost. At the police station, Rowan was questioned immediately. Video evidence was given, along with testimony from witnesses that made his denial irrefutable. The head of the police department, who had been informed by Mayor Mason Ryder, stated that Rowan's behavior was a stain on the entire industry. On the same day, he was officially suspended from work and faced a comprehensive investigation. The news spread quickly, not only in the local community, but also in the media. Videos of Rowan abusing power and treating Sophia Anderson rudely were shared millions of times, sparking a wave of outrage. People who had been treated unfairly by Rowan in the past also began to come forward, sharing their stories, making his situation even worse. Rowan, once proud of his position and power, now faced the inevitable downfall. People who used to know him began to alienate, and former colleagues showed disappointment. In the small house where he lived alone, Rowan sat with his head down, clearly feeling the weight of the mistakes he had made. Meanwhile, Sophia Anderson continued her life with humility and determination. She did not seek attention at all, but received countless thanks and admiration from the community. Her actions not only forced Rowan to pay the price, but also sparked a larger discussion about responsibility and ethics in law enforcement. In the end, Rowan Hayes not only lost his job, but also faced legal charges, including abuse of power and threats with weapons. In subsequent trials, he bowed his head, no longer any sign of the arrogance he once had. That is the price he pays for forgetting that power comes with responsibility, and that injustice never has a place in a just society. After the shocking event, Sophia Anderson's life did not return to the way it was before. The story of her courage quickly spread, becoming a symbol for those who dared to stand up against injustice. The press, the media, and even activists praised Sophia as a modern-day hero. But for Sophia, she didn't feel like a hero. She just saw it as the responsibility that a soldier and a citizen needs to do to protect the value of equity. In the weeks that followed, the impact of the event began to become apparent. Local police forces came under closer scrutiny, and some changes in the selection and training process were put in place. Seminars on responsibility and ethics in law enforcement were held, with Sophia invited as a keynote speaker. Standing in front of hundreds of people, she shared her story not to receive applause, but to remind everyone that power is only meaningful when used to protect, not to oppress. As for Rowan Hayes, his career was officially over. The public trial not only caused him to lose his temporary liberty, but also stripped him of his honor forever. The community turned its back on him, and those who once supported him could no longer forgive his abuse of power. In the darkness of his life, Rowan began to understand the bitter lesson that pride and injustice not only destroy others, but ultimately lead to self-destruction. Sophia, after all, didn't stop at her personal story. She became an inspiration for many movements fighting for justice and equality. Articles and videos recording her actions were shared everywhere, encouraging people not to be afraid when facing injustice. However, Sophia still maintained a simple and consistent demeanor. She continued to dedicate herself to the military, as a living demonstration that true strength does not lie in power, but in integrity and the courage to do the right thing. Every time she looked back on the incident, she did not feel regret, but instead a quiet pride, knowing that her actions had contributed to changing a small part of society for the better. For her, this story was not an end, but a reminder that the fight for justice always requires unanimity and courage. And she was willing to face any other challenges in her journey to defend the values she believes in. Sophia Anderson's legacy is not only documented in newspapers and videos that captured the moment she stood in the midst of a storm of criticism and threats, but also in profound changes in the way society views justice and responsibility. Her steadfast steps in the struggle against injustice created a wave of inspiration, not only in the military, but also in the community, especially for women and people of color who often face discrimination and marginalization. Every time they hear stories about Sophia, people remember not only her brave actions in the supermarket, but also a resilient woman who was ready to stand up against all injustice at great cost. The workshops she participated in have inspired many individuals, especially those in law enforcement, to defend dignity and respect human rights in all circumstances. The changes in the police recruitment and training process that Sophia helped initiate are starting to bear fruit. More and more officers are becoming aware of their responsibilities and professional ethics. But Sophia's legacy doesn't stop at reforms or social recognition. It is in her daily life that she has created a role model for the younger generation, who look to her and learn how to face challenges with calmness, patience, and uncompromising determination. Sophia doesn't seek fame, but the respect she receives, from her colleagues to the community, is a clear demonstration of the power that integrity can create. Despite facing difficulties and challenges throughout her career, Sophia has always stood her ground. She understands that legacy is not something that can be measured by fame or awards, but by the values one leaves in the hearts of others. And for Sophia, her legacy is the change she has sparked, the solid steps that the next generation will follow. The generations who stand up for justice and are not afraid of injustice. And so, no matter how many years pass, Sophia Anderson's legacy will live on, not only in seminars and speeches, but in the hearts of those who continue to fight for a more just and equitable society. After the affair with Rowan Hayes ended, Sophia Anderson did not stop at solving a personal case, but set herself a greater mission. She realized that injustice is not a rare thing, but a common problem, one that needs to be changed from the roots. Every day, every story she hears from oppressed and abused people makes her feel more responsible in her actions. She understands that it is not possible to rely solely on outstanding individuals to create change, but that there is a need for a broad movement, where everyone can speak up and fight for their rights. Sophia began to engage in call-to-action campaigns, inviting people, especially law enforcement, to reconsider their roles and responsibilities in upholding justice. She organized meetings, workshops, and media campaigns to encourage each individual to stand up and face injustice instead of remaining silent. Each of us has the right to say no to abuse of power, and each of us can make a difference. is a slogan she frequently mentions in her speeches. Sophia's encounters not only engage those in the military, but also extend to individuals in the civilian community, those who feel left out or have no voice in society. She encourages them not to be afraid in the face of power, because justice is a fundamental right, one that must never be trampled. Sophia's mood at this time was no longer cautious, but filled with strong determination. She understands that every action, every call, creates ripple effects, and that is the way to change the system in a long-term and sustainable way. Sophia is not only fighting for herself, but also for those who can't speak up, for the fairer society she dreams of. The call to action is not easy, but Sophia is ready to face the challenge. She knows this is a long road, and that not everyone will walk with her. But she believes in the power of solidarity, in the ability of each individual to make a difference if they don't stop fighting. With each step, Sophia has been turning her struggle into a powerful movement, a reminder that justice must be defended, not just for an individual, but for the entire community.